So we're live and welcome to Holographic Health. This is now episode number 6 with Simon and Kate. And there's quite an auspicious date coming up, or a date that is celebrated around the world, and that's solstice. So it could be Summer Solstice, depending on where you are in the world, in the Southern Hemisphere, or it's Winter Solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. So either the longest or shortest days. And Simon and I were talking just before we hit record about that particular date and what it means, and that this year is particularly special in terms of the vibration of the planet rising, ascension, a date that's actually sort of been talked about for eons, really, and what that kind of means. So, Simon, if you want to kind of lead us into that, and also you've been doing a fasting up to this date as well, which is really fascinating, just to prepare, I guess, your body and spirit and mind for that particular date. So I'd just love to explore that together, and then we can offer some practical advice to people listening, and an invitation to fast as well. And then we'll also talk a little bit about emotions at the end, and how we might be able to sit with them and work with them in a more, I guess, kind of way, in that we have gratitude for our emotions and that we honor what is there.
Good. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for the intro. Okay. So yeah, I'm really keen to talk about this subject of emotion. But before we do, yeah, I just would like to share with you a process that I'm nearing the end of now, which is a 21-day fast, which I started December the 1st, intentionally at this date, for the fast to climax on the 21st, which is the solstice. I think of it as the winter solstice. So although I'm in the tropics, where really the solstice is not really so noticeable. I'm from England, so the solstice was always very, very significant. You know, up in the northern hemisphere.
You really notice it there. Actually, having lived there for 10 years, it's a really a big thing. It's very poignant.
You really do, and of course, a lot of the ancient culture and traditions of that part of the world, you know, from the Celts, and then before that, the more kind of Druid led spiritual practices and pagan, very much around the movement of the sun, you know, and of course we're all familiar with Stonehenge, you know, and the way that the stones there have been erected almost like a giant clock to capture these particular days when, like the solstices and the equinoxes. Yeah, I just kind of felt to do this long fast at this time. It's something I've wanted to do. I've been fasting for years. Generally, my fast will be 5-7 days. Five is a really good length of time to fast for a thorough cleanse.
Yeah.
We can achieve this in 5 days. If you're particularly toxic, if you have any severe symptoms or disease that you're working with to heal, then longer fasts, prolonged fasts are really fantastic for that. But for most of us, 5 days is really enough, 5 to 7 days. But I've probably mentioned before, but that I'm a Reiki master. And within the tradition of Reiki, the founder of modern Reiki, a man called Mikao Usui, Japanese man called Mikao Usui, it is said that he received his enlightenment at the end of a 21-day fast. And so I remember the first time I read that thinking, and when I first started studying Reiki, I'd never done any fasting. I was like, oh my God, not eating for 21 days, I'm Jewish. So in the Jewish tradition, there is a day each year called Yom Kippur where we're supposed to fast for one day. And I think it's actually 2 days in the more kind of Orthodox kind of branch of Judaism. And I just remember I could never even do it for one day. I would always kind of like cheat. I remember learning about that and thinking, wow, that's amazing. And then over the years, as I've kind of practiced fasting, the potential of actually doing that was starting to feel more and more real. And so I kind of bit the bullet and thought, right, now is the time to do it. And also, as I say, I've become aware that the 21st this year, the solstice, is a particularly auspicious day, as you call it, significant day. So, the number 21 there, it just kind of felt like the right time. And so, yeah, I'll just share with you a little bit about the process of doing this extended fast, and then about why the 21st is so important. Yeah, it's been a really, really fascinating journey. I can't say it's been painless. I haven't suffered any major physical detox symptoms. So if you haven't fasted before, or maybe you haven't yet been able to refine your food intake to be as clean as it could be, you probably will experience some level of detox symptoms when you start fasting. And those can range from very severe, such as acute headaches and fevers, skin breakouts, diarrhea, all kinds of really unpleasant symptoms, to more mild symptoms if the level of toxins is not so severe. But fortunately, I really had very few. I remember second or third night just having some cramps, some aches in the joints, which just as some toxins were released from the body. But other than that, nothing really. But I think what has been most significant for me, and for me now, this is the real value of the fasting process, is more the kind of mental, emotional, spiritual process. And yeah, it's just absolutely fascinating. And I think what really struck me with this is that how often, even for myself, and I don't eat huge amounts, a long time ago now, I kind of gave up, kind of like diving for a chocolate bar as a comfort, or eating a pizza when I was feeling stressed or whatever. That stopped a long, long time ago. But still, I noticed this kind of how the mind looks for food. It's always, can you relate to that? It's like the mind's always looking for food. And it's like this constant distraction of the mind looking for food, even if it's healthy, even if it's just popping into the fridge and grabbing a date or something like that. It's constantly doing this. And so just not having that available, and this little inner battle that goes on, and just this process over the weeks now, because this is like nearly 3 weeks, just this process over the weeks, just really just letting go and completely surrendering to that, and just being in that place of absolute, what's the right word? It's like there's no escape. There's no escaping from self.
Yes.
There's no way out of self when you fast for an extended time. I think, yeah, I haven't used those words before. So, but I think that's absolutely spot on. There's no escape from just being with yourself. So it's like just you're forced almost by default into being in this extended meditation. And that's been my experience anyway. And I've also chosen during this to absolutely minimize my interaction with technology, with media. It's pretty minimal anyway by today's standards. But I've been even more kind of like super conscious about that as well too. So to kind of make it as much as possible a digital detox as well as it. So what else to share about that?
I can
Yes,
really
I
relate
mean,
as well to some of that, Simon, with your experience, because I've done a lot of fasting over the last 10 years. And this year I've probably done the most fasting that I've done in a year.
yeah,
And I sort of I do it when I feel I just sort of wake up one day and know that it's time to do one. And so I'll organize one, but I can really resonate with what you're saying with the process. And the first fast I did, I thought I was going to die, because I was like, what do you mean you don't eat food for the week? How is that possible? You know, I was like, appetite. This is not going to work for me. And I was pretty toxic at the time. So I had severe migraines and, you know, stomach cramps and
right,
all kinds of things. But no matter what the symptoms are or the expression of the toxins coming out happen to be, I always feel amazing at the end, physically, mentally, emotionally, no matter what that experience was like. And I have to say that every single one is different, no matter how many times I do them. But similar to you, I think this year, the cleanse, I did one for 5 days and I just was feeling so great. I just wanted to keep going. So I just added another couple of days on, but it becomes easier. And I think as the body's cleaned of toxins and you get the experience of that, and you know, change your diet and your lifestyle and all that kind of thing, you can start to tap into what you're talking about in terms of, so I think when you first start to do them, you're quite focused on, oh, when is my next juice and how am I feeling? And, you know, your mind's kind of a bit occupied with this process. And then as you kind of move through, you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I don't think about the juices or whatever it is. And so you're left with yourself and there's no food to go and get. And that can be challenging, but I think also really fantastic, because you get really clear. And the mind just works on this level that I don't know, I get quite amazed by it, sort of the clarity that comes in. And to your point about digital detox, I know a lot of people that do the fasting, but they don't support themselves properly. So they might fast, but they'll be online all day, or they'll still go and have a busy work schedule and commitments and things like that. So I think the supporting yourself through the fast is really important too. Like you mentioned, you have time off social media and support yourself in the process, which really helps, particularly if you're doing it for a purpose as well. And I feel like there should always be a purpose to doing it, that's deeper than just, you know, looking great or losing weight or whatever, because of course you can achieve that with fasting, but I feel like it's a really actually quite a spiritual process. Yeah.
For sure, it's a spiritual process. But having said that, if someone comes to fasting because they want to look better and lose weight, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You know, as of course you know, but you know, there may be people listening that don't know this. I have a detox retreat center here in Thailand. So this is what I do. And you know, so many people do come here for those reasons, and that's absolutely fine. You know, they may not consider themselves to be spiritual at all, but they realize that actually, yes, they are. And
Yeah.
this is so amazing. I've kind of witnessed this so many times, people really having a spiritual awakening during a fast when their main when their initial reason for fasting is to lose weight, or maybe they had some physical symptoms. And you see, what they then realize is that the cause of their being overweight or the cause of their disease was spiritual, you know, and and that yes, food does play a part of that, but it's just a part of that whole equation. And yeah, so and also I think what's important to add here, because you're talking about supporting yourself, and of course you and I are experienced with this and can do that. But if you're not experienced, I really encourage people to do this in a way that is supported by people that are experienced. And this is something that, you know, you and I have made. You know, have made a purpose out of our lives of doing this as well too, because like learning to do anything, if you learn the correct way and you go about it, you know, in the best way to start with, then you're building a good foundation for the future. Whereas if you don't, you could have a really painful, uncomfortable experience, and that could put you off. You could even actually hurt yourself as well too if you don't know what you're doing. So I just kind of wanted to put that in there for anyone that's listening that hasn't fasted but is, you know, feeling the call to do it. Then seek out some kind of like guidance and support, which could very well be one of us. You know, where please contact us if that's the case. But you know, or go to somewhere like our centre here in Thailand, the Ryan Retreat Centre in Koh Samui, or there are many around the world as well too. Yeah, I'd really encourage that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of back to where we were at. So where I've kind of got to now in this process, I'm a couple of days away from the end, is yeah, just feeling absolutely fantastic, feeling really focused, really clear, really light. Now, you know, the word light has two meanings. It can refer to weight, you know, and an absence of mass and weight, but there's also light as in the light that comes from the sky, the light. Yeah, the more light we become physically, the less dense we become physically, the more light as in photonic light we become. And this leads me now into what we want to talk about with the 21st. Yeah, and you referred to it earlier, is this what we could call ascension process. Yeah. And this is something that everyone goes through, whether they are consciously aware of it or not. Yeah, it's part of the journey of life. Yeah. And it's that it's a journey to, what is it? It's a journey from being, let's say, a kind of human animal to a more ascended spiritual expression of being a human. And some people really embrace that and pursue that and make it very much part of their purpose, and other people or may not be aware of that, or they may even resist it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually it's something that we all go through, whether it's within a single lifetime or over lifetime. Um, but um, as you kind of referred to earlier, this solstice is a particularly auspicious, particularly powerful day. It has been known of across many cultures, ancient cultures, for a very long time to be the point at which the human ascension as a collective reaches we could think of it as a critical mass, as a point of a tipping point.
Tipping point, yeah.
Where there is enough momentum and enough volume in that ascension process. That means that enough of us that are ascended to a degree that affects the whole. So a little bit like that 100 monkey effect, yeah. And this is very much how humanity works. We think of ourselves as being very individual, but of course we're a collective as well too. And this is why when a gnosis, when an understanding and knowledge comes into the collective, it ripples through the collective.
Yeah.
It spreads through an invisible field of consciousness. Okay, yes, these days we've got things like internet and all that kind of stuff to actually physically communicate things, but there is also a kind of energetic communication. And so what we mean by ascension at an energetic level is a raising of frequency. And this is what's happening at the moment. And whilst it may not necessarily look like that, if we look at what a lot of what's been going on in the world, particularly this year, where there's a real kind of climax of dysfunction in the world, really what we're seeing out there is the death of an old paradigm and an old frequency. And
absolutely.
the way that old frequency has expressed systemically is becoming increasingly dysfunctional. And what is being birthed is something of a higher frequency. And some people are really embracing that. Like you and I have been, Kay, and our friends and peers. And then there are those people that are resisting that, and they're holding on. They don't want things to change. You know, they want things to go back to how they were. But this 21st, as I understand it, is a point of no return. And it's inevitable now. It's not, I think for a while there's been a kind of, there's almost been this spiritual energetic duel between dark and light, between the old and the new. But it really feels now that fight has been fought and won, and we're just on that edge of that precipice, and the 21st is when we just kind of fall off that edge and we start to fly. I really feel that, and I really believe that. And so this is why the timing for me personally, because I thought, okay, if that is the potential, I want to make sure 110% that, you know, I'm in the right place within myself to just be able to embrace that. So to be as light as possible, to be filled with as much light as possible, to be at the highest vibration within myself as possible.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. And you know, we were chatting a little bit before we recorded, but that date being something that really everyone and anyone can tune into. You don't need to be an enlightened master or, you know, anything particularly fancy or special. Just and so, you know, something I'd been reading just earlier today, which just kind of came into my inbox. I didn't go looking for it, but it was an invitation to everybody really to use that date, the 21st, as a date to really just get quiet, even if it's just for 10-15 minutes, and to raise your vibrational state, or our vibrational state collectively, to a vibration of just love, of appreciation, of gratitude, of it could even just be tapping into that world that you want, a more beautiful world that you can feel, or maybe you can't see it yet, but you know what that feels like, or what it would be like for you. And it's that, like you said, that tipping point. And a lot of the teachers that I've learned from, and peers and colleagues as well, have talked about this. A collapsing of the old is needed for the new to come through. And I think sometimes as a society or people, we can get really wrapped up in having to do something specifically, or a super special ceremony that follows all these rules. But I think at a really simple level, the invitation is to take some time out on that day to get quiet, be present in the moment for 10-15 minutes, and just feel a state of gratitude or love, and send that out. And I feel like that ripple effect that can spread around the world for that moment is just going to support us in moving forward in a new paradigm, one that's more about collaboration and honoring cycles, and honoring emotions, and that all has a knock-on effect, of course, to honoring the earth and improving our mental health, which I know has been really tough for people this year, with everything that's been going on. And it's just stepping out of fear, and stepping out of worry, and embracing a different kind of feeling, a different kind of vibration. And I just feel like the power that brings is enormous if everybody just tapped into that, even just for a moment.
It really is. And you kind of brought up a couple of really valuable points in that. And I totally agree. If everyone, can you imagine if everyone, or a huge majority of the world's population, could just sit for 10-15 minutes and connect with feelings of love, gratitude, appreciation. And if you are able to visualize, some people find it easy to visualize. Some people are more connected with their feelings and less able to visualize. But if you're able to also visualize a more harmonious way of living, or how you'd really love to live, everything. Yeah, but if a huge amount of people could do that, the shift in vibration would be absolutely huge. Now, what I didn't mention before that is significant on the 21st is, astrologically, as well as the sun being at its lowest point, that actually in the northern hemisphere, it dips below the horizon. It dips below the horizon for 4 days. And it comes back up over the horizon on the 25th. What's the 25th? It's the birth of Jesus Christ. Well, it's not. It's the birth of the Son. So this whole story of Jesus. Now, I'm not negating the story of Jesus in any way, or the value of the story of Christ. And I actually have a deep spiritual connection with the Christ energy and the Christ consciousness, for sure. But the sun is reborn again on the 25th of December, after that 4 days. So as well as that going on, what's happening on the 21st is that Jupiter and
Saturn, I think it is.
Saturn, that's it,
Yeah.
Saturn, thank you, now are coming into exact
Exact
alignment,
alignment.
and this
Yeah.
is so rare. This is so rare. Now, we've all heard of the second coming of Christ, and we've all heard the story of how Jesus was born under the star. Okay, that was the last time that Jupiter and Saturn were in alignment. Okay,
Yeah.
and Saturn is the old Greek god Zeus. Yeah, Jupiter and Zeus, Jesus.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
so this is the second coming of Christ. Yeah, and what happens when these two planets come into alignment is a massive, massive photonic light burst, and that's what we're going to experience on the 21st. Yeah,
Beautiful.
this is like an enlightenment moment that is going to affect us all. You can't kind of hide from it. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, taking 10-15 minutes for yourself on the 21st, and ideally do this every day, but maybe even through now from the 21st to the 25th, take 10-15 minutes just for yourself, sit quietly, connect with feeling good, whatever makes you feel good. Remember whatever it was from your childhood that made you feel good. Whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. It's the feeling, and you mentioned that, and that is so key to everything. Is the feeling. Our feelings are our vocabulary with the universe. Not even our thoughts. Definitely not our words. It's our feelings. It's how we. And this is how we connect invisibly with each other and create this invisible, like a web, like a network of all our hearts connected with each other. And that's just so powerful. It's just powerful, beyond anything else. And that will totally be the final nail in the coffin of all the fear and the fear mongering that's going on at the moment, has been going on this year. And then the other thing that I'd like to just really invite people to do, we've been talking about fasting, is maybe just to consider doing a 1-day fast. Now, what we mean by fast, there are all kinds of ways to fast, but the essential component of fasting is not chewing solid food. So you can drink juice all day long while you're fasting, and we're not talking about juice out of the carton. We're talking about freshly prepared juice. If you love orange juice, you drink orange juice all day. Stock up on loads of oranges and get your squeezer out and drink orange juice. If you've got a machine and you can make up some nice juices, then by all means do that. Drink tea, drink water, but tea without milk and sugar, and a herbal tea rather than a caffeinated tea. Cut out coffee. You might get a little bit of withdrawal, a bit of headache from that, but that'll do you some good for a day. And really, if you can add that to what you're doing, then that will be amazing. And then just the final thing that you brought up, Kate, before I finish off with this, is you talked about it doesn't need to be some kind of ceremony or something. And
it can be if people are into that, but it's just.
Well, this is what I just wanted to suggest is that, ceremony or ritual can be something as minor as lighting a candle. It doesn't have to be a huge, big, elaborate. It's more about the intention, isn't it? So light a candle, light some incense. Buy some flowers, put some flowers in the vase. If you do anything like this with intention, then that is ceremony. Equally, you can do something very, very complex and ornate, but if the intention is there, then it's not ceremony. So it's all really just about ceremony. And I like the idea of lighting a candle, because we're talking about, enlightenment, about bringing more light into the world. So candles are always symbolic of that.
Yeah. And they're fun as well. And I just had a thought around, because it can be a bit of a full-on time of year, leading up to Christmas. You might have kids or whatever. And I think even getting your kids to join in, if you've got children or whatever, is really fun for them, actually. And my niece is 10, and we're just going to take a drive not far from where we are. And I'm so lucky to be in Australia at the moment. You can see the stars so clearly at night. So we're just going to take a drive not far and sit under the stars and feel some nice feelings together. And actually, I find that kids can be better at it than adults, because their imagination, so include people in your family or whatever, and just have some fun with it, I think.
Yeah, totally agree with you, and agree with you about children as well too. Definitely. Yeah, as you say, it's just about doing whatever you can do to raise your vibration. Yeah. And what that means in practical terms is feeling good. Do whatever you can do, feel good,
Yeah.
and that's really, in the true essence of Christmas and the Christmas spirit. And maybe we've kind of lost that, haven't we? And it's become so commercialized, and there's so much pressure and everything that comes with it. But it's the time of year for just being in that place of feeling good, and just kind of putting aside, all the cares of the year. And so I think this year more than ever.
Yeah, I agree, actually. And something that I was just thinking about as well was, we sort of touched on it a little bit before the call, and it's a little, I guess, kind of a little tangent to what we've just been speaking about, but us just talking now about Christmas, and that can be a little emotional and a little bit hectic and crazy, is something we were discussing was honoring emotions, and the difficult ones too. And it might just be a kind of a nice little segue into that. But we've talked previously on another episode about emotions and about feeling them. And we were sort of talking then about letting the emotions move through, or sort of transmuting them. And something that's been coming up for me in the last couple of weeks is just a different approach, in that it's around giving those emotions some attention, that they're sort of asking for attention or trying to show me something or teach us something. And it was around really just, in a moment of feeling something like anxiety, for example, the natural reaction might be to do something to get rid of that feeling, go for a walk or bake something, or do something, a healthy behavior to stop feeling the anxiety. And it was about, what if I sat with that emotion for a minute or 2 minutes? And I've been trying that out in the last couple of weeks, and it's been quite interesting, because I've come to see that in sitting with it, even just for a minute, it's kind of this weird thing. It's like this internal persona that is just asking to be seen. And in the act of just sitting with that for a minute and kind of going, I feel whatever it is, I'm going to give this some attention now. And just kind of, even I just think to myself, I see you and I hear you, and what is this here for? And is this real? I sort of have that kind of come through too. Is this really real, what I'm feeling, or is it something that I'm projecting or making up? And that little exercise has been really helpful in the last couple of weeks, and I can see how that could be helpful to others too, particularly at this time. Just taking a moment to let that emotion be there and just give it some notice. And it, it may or may not work, depending, but I've found that it's really helped because it's just another emotion in the facet of all the emotions that we feel. And we're human and we experience all the gamut of emotions, joy, sadness, maybe saying some anxiety or excitement or whatever, and they're all there to be experienced. And I don't think any are better than the other. It's just how we use them, or what they're trying to tell us. So I just wanted to kind of offer that up at this time as well. And what we've been mentioning around something like solstice, that's also a nice opportunity to kind of notice what's there and drop anything there that isn't serving us, and tune into something like love or gratitude, which I personally feel that we can all, in a moment, find at least one thing that we are grateful for. And that can be such a nice anchor and grounding, particularly at this time, and a springboard into feeling that higher vibration once it's there, but sort of not forcing yourself to feel happy if you're not. But there's always that opportunity to reach for a more helpful thought or a more helpful feeling, from the place that we're at, sort of not necessarily going from here to here in an instant, but just, a little way up. And we learn in the process. We learn about ourselves and about how we relate to other people. And I feel like that's just, a journey that we can take that helps us towards having that more beautiful world, a more harmonious world, by understanding ourselves and acknowledging what's inside, and letting that, our practices be something that then is serving ourselves and then serving the people we're with and our communities in the world, kind of beyond that. So I hope that's making sense in my yeah.
No, it makes a lot of sense, and you've done really well there to kind of put words, something that is kind of quite complex and intricate. We for generations and generations, we have been conditioned to suppress our emotions, not just the negative emotions, but also the positive emotions. And in a way, what has happened collectively and manifested into the collective is the unhealthy expression of these suppressed emotions. So you just have to look at, for example, the way that the suppression of real kind of like of our sexuality and intimacy, how that has manifested into some really kind of devious, kind of nefarious stuff that's been going on, in terms of the way people, a lot of people express their kind of sexuality and the emotions that they experience around love and sex and stuff. And there's many examples of that. And I absolutely agree that for us to move forward in a much more enlightened way as individuals and a collective, we need to really own and acknowledge and embody that full spectrum of emotions, including the most positive ones. I think there are many of us that struggle with and resist feeling joy and true love as much as we resist feeling fear and anxiety.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah.
So we end up living this very kind of narrow spectrum, and so these kind of emotions that we can't deny exist. I mean, they do exist, but they end up in the shadows, and they end up becoming our shadows. And this also, so we really need to kind of, I think also what you're talking about here to some degree is really kind of like doing that shadow work, really kind of like owning those aspects of self that you may probably prefer not to be and to have, but actually just giving them some space to be, you know, and
yes, space to be
and
like
it's also,
that.
yeah, and it's also about the inner child, isn't it, as well too, that in the same way, see, if you've got a child that's playing up and you try and discipline that child and just tell it not to behave like that, it's just going to do it more and more and more. But
Yeah.
if you actually acknowledge that child and the tantrum that they're having, or the mood that they're having, or whatever it is, that will soon dissipate. And it's the same with that child within, isn't it? So what you're saying is totally correct. But if you kind of acknowledge and give attention in the same way that you would the child, that actually the tantrum's not going to last so long. You know,
Yes.
there's that saying that you and I use so often, which is what we resist. So if you're
Yes.
resisting a particular emotion, then it's just going to continue. Whereas you
Yeah.
acknowledge it, you honor it, you give it space to be, and actually, it's probably not going to last that long anyway. If you
Yeah.
do that, is it?
Yeah.
Now, you were talking about kind of transmuting. Now, I think this is something that is a more, let's say, a more masterful, and
Yes.
it's a more masterful way of being with emotions, and maybe it's something that comes later on. So, you know, at the moment, many of us are quite emotionally immature because we haven't been educated with our emotions, you know. So what you and I are talking about now is kind of going through that process of emotional maturity. So yes, as a next step, I think just owning those emotions, being with those emotions rather than looking for distraction from them is definitely the right way to go. But then I think then we get to another level of our emotional development where we're able to transmute. So yeah, there's that acknowledgement. I feel angry. I feel shame, whatever it is,
Whatever. Yeah.
and but then you'll very rapidly be able to transmute that into a higher frequency of emotion.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
compassion, love, whatever that is, and that's the kind of, yeah. In the tarot, the second card in the tarot is the magician, or the alchemist, and this is what alchemy is. It's nothing to do with turning lead into gold. It's that inner alchemy, you know, but of transmuting energies within yourself, yeah. And we can all do that, um, for sure. But you know, you and I always come back to food, because food is just at the foundation of everything.
Yes.
If you're not eating a good, clean, high vibration kind of diet, then then to alchemize a low vibration emotion as you experience, it's so much harder to do, because you're just not, because your base level, let's say your base energetic level is so much lower, you know.
You feel sluggish,
So
tired, and you can't be bothered.
right,
All of this, and then if you
exactly.
feel
So
a negative
you're much more
emotion,
likely, yeah, you're much more likely just to get caught up in the frequency of that emotion, aren't you? Whereas if you're kind of, let's say you're kind of, I can't think of a better way of describing it, but your kind of general base level is of a higher resonance, a higher frequency, you know, you're less likely to get caught up in that lower frequency emotion. And so it's a much easier job just to kind of lift that and transmute that into something a lot higher. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I'd forgotten that we were talking about that earlier, actually, because it's, yeah, you're so right. And I think from from a food and dietary point of view, it's just, if food influences our mood in an incredibly significant way. So once you start to eat fresh live foods that really nourish your body, your mood improves. It's just, you feed the good bacteria in your system, and it's all symbiotically working together as a unit, and you just feel so much better. And you know, I've just come back from my friend's farm, and we were picking berries straight from the bush and eating them as we were picking them, and you know, everything straight from the farm. And the feeling of that is just, you feel it as you're eating it, and you do just feel lighter and more relaxed, and you have this level of appreciation for what you're eating. And then that allows you to go to the emotions that are not so comfortable. And I think that's what fasting does for me anyway as well. It actually cleans up everything, so you can actually look at what's there that's asking for the attention, that you couldn't really deal with before. Yeah, and I was very sick before I started fasting, and I had so many physical symptoms of a whole raft of different things. I was so sick, I couldn't get beyond that. That was my daily life, was just dealing with how crap I felt. So I couldn't even go to the emotions. Everything just had to be suppressed because there was other stuff to deal with. And as the physical things healed, then it gave the space and energy and lightness to the emotions. And actually it was quite a pleasurable process, I suppose. It's not like dealing with the negative emotions has to be a negative thing. It can actually feel pretty good. You know, if you feel really sad and you just need to cry, just cry. And you feel...
I like that. I really like that, Kate, and I really resonate with that. There can be a real sense of aliveness in just owning and embodying those painful emotions. I really get that, and I experienced that myself. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just part of the rich kind of tapestry of life, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
you can't experience joy if you don't know what the opposite is like. So there's I think that's a great point. And I don't know how we're doing for time.
Yeah, we need to wrap up. We've got a couple of
It feels
minutes
like
left.
we're getting to a good point to
Yeah.
finish up with. So, you know, so what would you say to anybody who at the moment, you know, it's all very well for us, we're sitting here, we're in good places, we've done a lot of kind of healing on ourselves, you know, and but what would you say to anyone that, you know, is feeling at the moment that they're, you know, they're not in a good place, but emotionally feeling feeling pretty unbalanced? What would you say? Where's a good place? Where do you start? Where to go?
Yeah, a good place would be, I always find that being curious is a good place to start from when you feel particularly all over the place. And also just to say that, you know, even though you and I are in pretty good places, and we're really lucky to be in countries that are, you know, we're not having to deal with too much in terms of what some other countries are dealing with, but we've both got our own inner things we're dealing with. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a lot of anxiety just around a few things, and it was really bad on a particular day. And so just kind of offering to anyone that might be going through something that's really challenging is just to take a minute and to just see if you can just sit with what you're feeling. Maybe turn off the TV or whatever it is that you're doing. Just allow yourself a minute to sit with it. And a practice that I find helps is to put on some really calming music. I listen to some Japanese flute music, and I just popped that on. I did this a couple of weeks ago, and I just sat for a couple of minutes with how I was feeling. And perhaps just to ask yourself the question, you know, is this true right now? What I'm feeling, is this because of something that's really happening that's making me feel this way? And just getting curious about what it is and sitting with that for a minute or so, if you can, just giving the emotion some space, and then if you can, I'm not going to say to try and move that emotion or try and make yourself feel a higher vibration, because that may not be available to you right now. But a practice and something we spoke about last week was just the notion of gratitude. And I truly believe that if you can even think of one thing that you're grateful for, and maybe there's nothing that you can feel grateful for right in this moment. So look at something that you're grateful for in your past or as a child, anything that you can kind of go, that was great. I'm really grateful for that thing, or that time that that person did that thing for me, or that meal that was amazing, whatever it might be. Just that feeling of gratitude sends signals from the brain down to the body, and it's feel good signals and feel good chemicals that go through the body. And that is something that I would offer as a simple practice that anybody could do, that should help you start to feel more grounded and better within yourself. So that is what I would offer up in terms of that, particularly with what's going on at the moment.
I think that's really, really sound advice. Yeah, very
Yeah.
much so. Yeah.
And
And the other thing I'd just like to add as well too is, if anyone listening is finding themselves in a challenging place and would like to reach out to either one of us for support, then please do. I believe we have links for our contacts below. So we're both more than happy to be of any kind of support that we're able to do.
yeah, absolutely. From a fasting point of view or lifestyle, or you just want to talk about your emotions or whatever, we can definitely support you. And Simon, I don't know if you wanted to close out anything in regard to the solstice, but for me, just a reminder to maybe put some time in your calendar or diary or something like that, and just do something simple for just raising the vibration of the world. So kind of thinking above and beyond our individual selves for a moment, that can help for a more harmonious world and life for everybody.
Perfect. I couldn't say anything more or better.
Oh.
So,
Thank you, Simon. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And if you want our contact details, they're in the notes section or about section. And we'd love to hear from you if you want to reach out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Simon.